Today I'm going to be watching the Woody Allen Ant movie. He buries himself in dirt years before he buries his career. I mean, just Google it. The guy's a f***ing creep. I'm going to be honest with you. I didn't think I'd be making this video today. For some of you guys who have stuck around all these years probably know, I'm not the best when it comes with consistency. You'd think it'd be easy to just, watch a movie, review it, and then just talk about it. But who cares about the writing? Who cares about the editing? And maybe just that inner dialogue I have when I'm actually editing the footage, thinking that this video might actually be good, but then watching the final product and not feeling that fulfilled. That was what was happening. And whenever I get to that point, I just kind of stop. And frankly, I'm trying to work on it. I know it's going to sound sappy, but I do feel blessed to have built up this following of people who still stick around and watch my videos, comment, and do all that fun stuff. That's why I'm going to try a new approach with my videos. This is introduced by the content creator Struthless. I'll put a link to his videos below, but he's got this great approach called the Alphabet Superset. The idea is to create content consistently for 26 weeks, using the alphabet as inspiration behind each topic. Other people are applying this method not just to making videos, but for making artwork, music, any sort of creative avenue. I really think if you're a creator who deals with similar issues that I deal with, this might be right up your alley. At the end of the day, I love movies. And I love animation. It's art in motion. A sequence of images that tell a story. Oh god, I sound like Nicole Kidman. Anyways, I keep this channel alive because I've wanted to keep those passions alive. I've noticed other people share my love of animation, and at times they also share that hatred we have for certain movies too. Even doing this channel helps me figure out what I did when I first got into this thing, many years ago when I was a teenager, 18 years old, and I want to go back to that, while also being introspective on the things that made it hard for me at the same time, and maybe challenging myself to try to stand up for it in some ways, or really understand it. So to start the challenge, I thought about the very beginning when I first made these videos. The advice I was getting from all these other YouTubers was to start with a cartoon that left an impact on you, but was also fun to take apart. This is where Shark Tale came up for two reasons. One, I found it in a thrift store in Philly, and two, it is a very weird movie that did leave a horrible impact on me as a kid. Watching it then made me realize that it may not have been the worst thing ever, but since this whole project is about me going back to my roots, I need to find something similar, a movie that was both cringy and memorable, and also happens to start with A, and then it blew my mind as to how obvious this was. Let's just talk about Antz. It's pretty much similar to Shark Tale. So here we are, 13 years later, for the first time since I reviewed a similar DreamWorks cartoon. What do we got in store? Antz is the story of a neurotic ant who questions his existence while also trying to get laid. Hilarity ensues. Alright, there's more of a specific plot to it, where he goes into the army to get on a second date. Then he gets kicked out of his colony. He finds a trash can, which for these other bugs is like Nirvana. I mean, that's kind of a funny joke. But you really do get a sense that this character just kind of wanders throughout most of the movie. The Woody Allen character really isn't that believable. He's a Woody Allen character, neurosis and all. I know this is a quality you see in a lot of the Woody Allen films, but if you saw it at the time when I was a kid, it wasn't really something you were really looking forward to or watching. You didn't really know much about his movies since they were mostly adult films. In fact, now you talk about Woody Allen nowadays, he falls into the Me Too category of creeps and, no pun intended, bugs of yesteryear. I mean, I get that the character goes through an arc in the film, but at the end, I don't really buy into this growth outside of him being a bumbling idiot who oftentimes just throws people under the bus. It does piss me off a little bit when a famous person who knows he's famous shows up into a movie and just expects people to enjoy his shtick. Like, it actually takes effort. You're not just supposed to just show up and just read lines. I mean, I think about that Salt Bae guy during the FIFA tournament. Does this guy look like he knows how to play soccer? Get the f*** off the stage. The other characters I can't really relate to as well, on top of the fact that most of them are just celebrity voices. Like, the top billing, don't get me wrong, is fantastic. Sharon Stone's the love interest, Sylvester Stallone is the best friend, Gene Hackman is the villain, and even Christopher Walken is his lackey. Stallone might be the only one who takes the most advantage of his character, whereas his character design and his dialogue really makes you believe that he and the main character are really good friends, and you really do kind of enjoy that dynamic. You the ant! Alright, most of the dialogue, that line still sucks decades later. Now to give you an idea how blank these characters are, the villain's motivation is to kill a majority of the colony and start anew with this princess character. Why does he want to wipe out the whole colony of ants? Because he's a narcissist, I think. Like, he just thinks he's the perfect specimen, and that there really isn't anything that memorable about Hackman's performance or animation that can essentially elevate the motivation. In a different movie with a little bit more exaggeration, it could work. Like, you have a character that wants to build up a Third Reich of ants. I mean, how the hell do you not make that interesting? So this is ironic, because overall this movie does have this cynical, mean-spirited edge that they occasionally play up. Starting with the dialogue. There are lines in this film that I could not believe were in a PG movie.
I've been listening to you complain. What are you bitching about?
And I also don't know how else to say this without it sounding weird, but the best thing about the movie is when the characters are dying. Like, it's so messed up, but rewatching this film and seeing all that bug carnage, it's not only funny, but it's also really warranted when most of the characters are self-absorbed assholes. The problem is that it's occasional. For the other half of the film, the movie does feel like it's trying to play it safe like most animated films at the time. Like having a princess character. Speaking of which, think about this for a second. Aren't all ants in a colony coming from the same gene pool? Like, what makes this so special? Is it because she's going to get the basketball butt? I don't know. Yeah, funny enough, since we're on the topic of overused tropes, this was supposed to be a Disney film. In the 90s, there was some drama over at the Mouse House where previous CEO Jeffrey Katzenberg walked away to form his own animation studio. He brought some of the ideas along with him, including a movie about a talking ant. Didn't help because at the same time, Pixar had their own movie with a talking ant and they were going to be releasing it around the same month. This is why for the longest time we would see both studios seeming to have knockoffs of each other. Competition's one thing, but there was something so bizarre about two movie studios making the same type of movie and then releasing them a month apart from each other. Like, this isn't direct-to-DVD knockoffs made from a third world country to just cash in on a popular trend. We're talking about reputable studios with really good credibility. I feel bad that I never really looked into PDI, the studio that would later become DreamWorks Animation, but that studio had some banger special effects for its time. Which, of course, I'm going to have to talk about the animation. I mean, it's an animated movie, so I'm going to have to talk about it. I do try to remind myself that this movie was made when most computers could barely render an image of a hot dog. However, the best way I could describe this, let's go back in time for a second. When we were watching movies back in the day, we had the 4:3 aspect ratio, right? We also had darker theaters. We also had smaller television screens. There was a heavy use of a lot of shadows when it came to early CG so that you didn't really notice all the poorly rendered stuff or the poor lighting. Now that I'm watching this at home on a flat screen TV with high definition, it's really obvious. I see all the unnatural cast shadows and the lip movements. It's really bad. Watching the film again does make me realize how limited the animators had to making these characters as expressive as their hand-drawn counterparts. For example, you got the Stallone character, the character design and the animation does support it. Most of the other bugs do kind of look generic and come from the same template. And don't get me wrong, I do like me a good throwback to the 90s era of extreme and weird bug animations and monster designs, but watching it for an hour and a half is not very entertaining. For every dumb line begging to be a catchphrase, I do just want someone to get torched. So overall, some don't add up to its parts. I didn't even really get into the score, which is still pretty memorable 20 years later. But overall, I am left with this unfulfilled feeling that I had when I was a kid first watching this film. So with an unfulfilled feeling, I'm just going to have to go ahead and say it's a meh. Well, let's see what the next 25 films have in store for me. I know it makes sense to just talk about Bug's life since I kind of talked about it earlier, but for me, there's some bigger dicks, bigger fish to fry. I'm Joey Tedesco, and thanks for watching this review on the Cartoon Palooza.